In the wise words of Rafiki, Mariah Carey, and others, it is time. It is finally time. I am finally ready to talk about Onyx Storm. So I have taken some time. I finished Onyx Storm a little bit over a month ago, but I wanted to take some time to kind of think about and reflect on the book before I made my review video with my theories and all that good stuff. I have digested what I've needed to digest, I've seen what I needed to see, and I am finally ready to fully discuss Onyx Storm in its entirety. So we're gonna kind of just jump right into it, and we're not gonna waste any time here. So let's do it. So as per usual, I have my copy of Onyx Storm, and I also have all of my notes that I wrote down. It took me some time to kind of like collect all of my thoughts on this book. I've seen a lot of mixed reviews for Onyx Storm. Some people didn't enjoy it as much as the first book or the second book. I found that this book for me actually worked a lot. I liked it as much, if not maybe even like a little bit more than the first book. I feel like it was good pacing. I feel like it did a really good job of pushing the plot forward. It didn't have some of the issues that I had with the second book with like the very repetitive conversations and stuff like that. I feel like this one was just good. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that everyone else enjoyed it too. So just a reminder, Onyx Storm is the third book in the Empyrean series, the first book being Fourth Wing, the second one being Iron Flame, and then you have Onyx Storm. So just a little bit of background of what the Empyrean series is about, just in case someone might not know. The Empyrean series, the first book being Fourth Wing, follows the story of Violet, and Violet is kind of like this legacy student at this war college. Her mom went through, her older brother went through, her sister went through, and now it's her turn to kind of go through. The main difference is that in this war college, you're not only training for war, but you also have the opportunity, depending on which division of the military that you go into, you have the opportunity to possibly bond with a dragon and become a dragon rider and become part of this like elite special unit, basically. So Violet, she's a little bit on the weaker side. She's kind of small. She was born with this issue where her joints tend to subluxate. I thought that's the right word. She has issues with her joints. And her bones are very brittle. They break very easily, and like she has a couple different issues like with her ligaments and her tendons. But her mom doesn't care. Her mom is sending her into Basgiath and this war college, and she says like, you're gonna be a rider. So you kind of get to see throughout the first book Violet's journey as she tries to survive in this super deadly war college where majority of people don't make it to graduation. While she's there and while she's getting ready to set off, her sister's kind of like, hey, like, by the way, like, stay away from Xaden Ryerson, because a few years ago there was a rebellion from Xaden's people that were like going against Navarre, which is the country that they all live in. As like a result of the uprising, majority of like Xaden, who he's from Tyrandor, like the parent generation in that group of the uprising, they were all executed for their treason, basically. Kids now are being forced to enter into the Riders Quadrant at the school. So she kind of has to like avoid him if she can, but she finds herself kind of like, you know, attracted to him a little bit, and she can't really stay away. And Violet's kind of in a unique situation because her father was training her to become a scribe, which is basically the people that record all of the history for the country. And she kind of, as she goes to school and she learns more and she does all these different training missions, she kind of realizes that maybe not everything is exactly as she thought it was. So there's just a lot of like political intrigue, romance, adventure, fantasy. Like there's just a lot going on in the book series, and I feel like that's what makes it so appealing and why so many readers have kind of flocked to it. Because there's a little bit of something for everybody, and I feel like that's super enjoyable to read about. So Onyx Storm, we're continuing the story. I can't really talk too much about the synopsis of Onyx Storm without having spoilers. So if you haven't read the Empyrean, I'm gonna ask that you go read it, and then you can always come back and discuss with us. But for now, that's gonna be it for like the non-spoilery section past book 1 and 2. And we're gonna jump into the spoilers for Onyx Storm. So, bye. I think like the first thing that I want to kind of like touch upon is like where we left off with Iron Flame, and kind of like what my theories were going into it. So first off, we have like where we left off, and I did have to take notes for this because there's so much that happens in the end of Iron Flame. I keep like mixing up the titles. I'm like, Iron Storm, not right, Iron Flame. So where we left off, we have Arisha and like the Deserter Squad, which is like, I don't know if they ever gave us like an official name for them, but like that's what I've been calling them. They return to Basgiath to kind of help with an attack that's coming from the Venin. Somehow, some way, they were going to be infiltrating the school. Once we get there, we find out that Jack is a Venin, and he's the one that's going to help with this infiltration of the school. He destroys the ward stone and then kills his dragon but lives. So we find out that Andarna is a 7th breed of dragon, so she's not like blue, red, orange, any of that. She's like a separate breed, separate type of dragon. And we find out in Onyx Storm what she is, but at the end of Iron Flame, we don't know yet. We just know she's the 7th breed. You have this epic battle where Sawyer unfortunately loses his leg, which I was so devastated about. He really just like tried so hard, and like he was already went through first year, like he's a year behind already, and then like you have this poor boy loses his leg. Makes it hard for him to be a writer. You have Lilith, who sacrifices herself in order to imbue the wardstone with power. That scene made me cry like a baby. I did not love Lilith as a character, but I understood her struggle as a mother. Even though I'm not like a mom myself, I understood what she was struggling with. And then you have that big reveal at the end where you find out that Xaden is in fact Venin. And then he kind of like goes to Jack to ask like, okay, how can I undo this? How can I cure it? And Jack's like, no, you can't cure it. Like, you're stuck like this now. So that's where we leave off. And then going into it, I had a couple of different theories that I thought were gonna come true. So I outlined some of those too. So the first one, I felt that the Isles were going to play an important part in the book. Maybe they were gonna have some sort of cure for the Venin. They were gonna have something to do with the storyline. And I thought that it was gonna be Violet and Dane that went off to the Isles on their own in order to find the cure. I thought that this would kind of like force the two of them to kind of reconcile and grow closer, and that was gonna cause some friction between Violet and Xaden. Xaden's kind of jealousy would drive him in order to become full Venin. Kind of like he's weak, you know, from having to fight this constantly because of just like the fact that he's so scared of hurting Violet, he was going to stay behind. And I felt like Justinia was going to be the one to kind of like find that info that was going to be like, okay, you guys have to like go to the Isles and figure out what's going on there. I still was praying for Liam to be alive. I'm still praying for Liam to be alive now, even after finishing the book. One day, he's going to come back. I think he's going to come back and he's going to be evil, and I will die on that hill. My last prediction is that Violet is going to have the ability to conjure spirits, because you kind of have that scene where she kind of like hallucinates Liam being in the prison cell with her. So I thought that maybe she would be able to like have control over spirits, and then because of that she could kind of like call on her dad in order to give her some answers, because we learn in the second book that he's been studying the Feathertails. So we kind of have that connection there. So that kind of like sets us up now that we can go in and we can talk about the book. So I went to the midnight release for Onyx Storm at my local Barnes & Noble. They did like trivia, and we had to like do like a scavenger hunt to find dragons around the bookstore. It was like a fun experience to be like around other people that like also enjoyed the book. I had fun with it. I really enjoyed it. So my older sister went with me, and when we got home we read the first chapter together. And I have to say, I just fell in love from the very first line. I was like, oh yeah, like we are so back. So exciting. So the very first line was, where in Malik's name is he going? And I don't know, it just made me laugh. Just like the exasperation, like in her tone, like gave like exhausted single mother whose toddler keeps running away from them and they have to keep chasing after them. And I was kind of just like, all right, we're back. I'm into this. This is great. So I think we kind of kicked off with a bang, where we kind of have Violet and Andarna kind of discussing what the next steps are and whether or not Xaden can be trusted and what to do from here. I do apologize because I'm going to be reading from my notes a lot, because there's so much to think about and so many things and points in this book that like I don't want to forget anything. So I'm going to do my best to like regular talk when I can, but a lot of it's going to be me reading from my notebook. So the quote for chapter 2, like the opening quote for chapter 2, it mentions that there were the 6 most powerful signets, and they've only ever all walked the continent at the same time once. So I'm gonna guess it was like the first time that they vanquished the Venin. And if I had to guess this time who these 6 are, like who I think the most powerful people are gonna be, I would pick Violet, I would pick Xaden, I would pick Mira, I would pick Sloane, I would pick Dane, and for some reason I'm thinking Bodhi, but I might be wrong. I'm iffy on Bodhi. I feel like it might be Eric, but I also feel like there are some things in this book that like made me think Bodhi. And I'll go back and I will defend my answers to these to these questions as we get like further into the discussion. So we know from the end of book 2 that Jack is a Venin now, and they have him captured and locked away down in like their little interrogation room from the second book. The one thing that I'm curious about is that at one point Garrick mentions that Jack drained everything in the little interrogation room already, so he'll likely be dead soon. So clearly they need to continue to draw power from wherever their source is, or they'll die. So like what happens if the Venin do like win the war and they take over Navarre and beyond? And what happens when there's like nothing left to drain, you know? Like, do they just die out? Or like eventually the land will like, I don't know, rejuvenate and then they can go back and start over from scratch? Do they drain from other Venin? Like there's so many questions about like the Venin themselves and how they work that I have that I'm just like hoping we get some answers eventually. There weren't too many answers in this book, so I'm hoping that in book 4 or 5 that we'll have a couple more answers to the questions about the Venin themselves. Speaking of Garrick, I feel like he really got bumped up in importance in this book. I feel like he got like a whole personality. Like I feel like, yes, we knew Garrick was there and he was Xaden's best friend, and like every once in a while he would pop up, but I really feel like he became a really important part in this book. I don't remember him having such an important part in the last 2 books, or I don't remember him having as much of a personality and interacting as much with Violet, especially in the second book, because he was now part of the army, so he was like out and away for most of the book. We didn't really see him as much, so it was nice to kind of see him get like a little more time to shine. And like in that same vein, like Garrick is just so done with Xaden. Like he's so annoyed. He's like, well, you kind of did this to yourself. And I enjoyed that he was kind of giving Xaden some pushback on that. I feel like Violet was very like forgiving and understanding. Garrick was kind of holding him a little more accountable. I feel like he needs that. Like he needs somebody to kind of like get on his back and be like, no, you messed up. Like you did the wrong thing. Not be as forgiving as Violet is with Xaden. While we're on the topic of Xaden, and his new Venin-ness, was I the only one that really badly won Violet? And I'm gonna say this not correctly, but I'll do my best. I really wanted Violet to just shove Xaden in the Rybestad chest thing that we saw in book 2 that Takaris has. Especially because Violet kept mentioning in the beginning, she was like had a deal with Takaris that she was kind of like working out. I really thought they were going to get the chest and they were going to like shove Xaden into it, because like it would suspend him and keep him from furthering the process of becoming a Venin. Like I feel like it would have been a great way to kind of like freeze him in time so that he didn't continue to progress through the stages of the Venin. But I was like, the little chest thing is like literally right there. Like use it. Like use it. It could be such a great tool. While Violet's kind of out searching for the cure, like let Xaden put him in the box. Put him in a box and leave him to do what he needs to. And while we're kind of like on that vein of Venin, I've seen so many people like in between books mention that they felt like Brennan was a Venin. And I really didn't believe it at first. I kind of was like, nah. Looking back, like I just didn't see how that could be, until there's that scene where Violet and Xaden are in Violet's room, and all of a sudden like Xaden like looks towards the door, just like seems like he like senses that someone's at the door, opens it, and Brennan's there, and it immediately like clicked into my head that like Jack had just said something like the chapter or 2 before about like Venin being able to sense each other. So like was Brennan a Venin and Xaden was able to sense him on the outside of the door, or was it like just like a wards thing? Like because he created the wards like around Violet's room, he was able to sense. I don't know. But I was like, maybe these people are onto something. Like, could be. So I have a confession to make. I know during my Fourth Wing video, I kind of was very anti-Dane, but probably sometime last March, so the second book had been out for a few months, I started to like really think about Dane's character and who he was, and I started to kind of feel bad for him because I feel like at the end of the day, all he was doing was really trying his best to protect his best friend in the only way that he knew how. And I think that he gets a lot of flack for that, and I feel like that's not necessarily fair. He is a young boy being influenced by his father. He's always been taught a certain way, to act a certain way, to respect the military, to respect his higher ups. He gets like such a bad rap for just like following directions and like doing what everyone around him is telling him is the right thing to do. And I just feel like I feel bad for Dane. So that was kind of like how I felt like around like March. I remember expressing that to my sister and to my coworker, and just like saying like I feel bad for Dane. I actually don't think he's that bad of a guy. I had a feeling, like I had said in my like going into this book, what I thought that Dane was going to get like a little bit of a redemption arc, that him and Violet were going to kind of like reconcile and things were going to go back to normal and they were going to become close again. And we do really get to see that in this book, and we really get to see a really great side of Dane. I feel like Rebecca Yarros does a good job of kind of like building him back up, but like slow enough where it's not like, okay, everyone automatically just like forgives him again. Like he's gradually earning our trust again. And I feel like that's good writing. Like I'm enjoying kind of seeing Dane have this redemption arc. Especially that moment where he's like, no, like I already tried telling first years what to do. Like I learned from my mistakes. But I will say that moment where him and Aura Bindhaven are having, I call it a codex off, and she's like, article whatever. And he's like, well, article whatever. And then like they're going back and forth. Like I feel like that's like Dane's dream. Like I was like, wait a minute. Dane probably loving this right now. So I am a Dane apologist, and I think that that's okay. I think that he deserves everybody's apology and that we should all love him. And that's my thoughts on Dane. And I'll go kind of deeper into this as we get further into the book. So now that the wards have been kind of ignited by Lilith and Andarna at the end of the second book, all of the flyers no longer have their powers within Basgiath's borders. So in order to kind of like fix that, they have to go down and they have to fiddle around. They decide with the ward stone and the engravings on the side of it that make the protections, and they remove the first protection and nothing happens, and they're like, okay, no. They move the second one, and then it turns out the flyers now can do magic. What was the first protection? Like, I'm so curious to know what that first protection was. Like, what's gonna happen? That has to come up later. I feel like there's no way it's not coming up later. Like, maybe the next book or book 5. I feel like they were messing with the magic. Like, it's something's gonna happen where it's gonna be some sort of protection that was important that they took off by accident. But I'm telling you, watch out. That's gonna come back again at some point. So then we have the introduction of this Venin named Theophany, and I was so convinced. I still kind of am convinced, I'm not gonna lie, that Theophany was gonna be Lyra. So Lyra, just for like a recap purpose, is one of the original 6. And I really just was so convinced like Theophany was going to be Lyra. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first one was that in the chapters where we have Lyra's, like the opening of the chapters where we have the quotes, the ones that talked about like Lyra being frustrated with the way that the first 6 were kind of running Navarre, and they were like having issues. She was having issues with it. She's not happy. She kind of is giving pushback, and I feel like that could be one reason that she kind of turned maybe towards like the Venin side. The second reason was the chapter 2 opening. And this is because of the idea of like the most powerful signets thing, specifically like the lightning aspect. I figured that maybe Lyra was since she's one of the original 6, might have had these lightning powers, and it's been a while since we've had a lightning wielder, so maybe it lined up. I don't know. I was just very convinced about this. but I'm a little more iffy now. As we got more information throughout the book, I'm like, maybe not, but I'm holding that in my back pocket just in case. That I think that maybe Theophany might actually be Lyra, possibly. Or like a descendant of Lyra, maybe. I don't really know. So I'm also interested, speaking of signets, about like the second signet thing. I think Garrett's second signet, awesome. I love the whole like idea of like a walker, or like basically like he's teleporting or like moving fast or whatever. I think that that's a really cool signet, and it did make me reconsider whether or not he was going to be one of those like original 6, but I feel like I'm holding out for Bodhi. I think it might be Bodhi. So I'm not going to say that I think that he's one of those like most powerful 6 signets yet, even though his signet is pretty cool. And I think it's funny because like I take notes as I read, and I will like, you know, full on notes while I read. And I had a note where when they find out that Andarna's type is called an Irid, I was like, oh, Irid for iridescent. And I wrote that on my note. And then like literally like the next chapter, Riddick is like, oh, Irid for like, that must be short for iridescent. And everyone's like, yeah, like, what did you think it was? And I was like, okay, don't come for me and Riddick. Riddick is my boy. I love Riddick. I think that I always fall for like the funny, like charming characters. Like they're always wind up being my favorite. So like Riddick, boosted right to the top. Excellent character. Love the comedic timing. I love that he gets to have his like serious moments where he's concerned over Violet's safety. You get to kind of see him be like almost like a big brother, almost, I feel like in some ways. I almost feel like he acts more like a big brother than Brennan does in some cases to Violet. I don't know. I thought that he was great. But me and him, same wavelength with the Irid and the Iridescent. We were like, wow. And everyone else was like, yeah, obviously. But whatever. I think that I might have like actually screamed when they announced that they were finally going to the Isles. I was like, oh, yes, yay. Oh, I was so excited because I was like, I feel like some of my theories kind of are a little wild for this series, but the Isles, I just feel like that was like an easy one. I feel like it was obvious they were going there. They mentioned it so many times in the second book, but I was still excited because I was like, look at me go. So smart. So we finally get that journey. And I don't have anything in my notes about Halden, but I feel like I need to mention Halden, specifically the basket scene where he falls out of the basket. I think about that scene and I immediately start laughing. I know he doesn't like actually fall out of the basket, but it's like kind of implied that he like trips getting out of it, and like ever since then, like I laugh about it, and like me and my coworker laugh about it like all the time. We're like, Halden in the basket, ha ha ha, and we laugh. I think Halden, interesting character, super annoying. I'm kind of glad that as a community we have shifted our hate from Dane to Halden instead, because Halden deserves it, you know. But that whole scene, even when they get to Takaris's house palace thing, and Xaden's like, so I'm not her teacher? No, I'm not her teacher right now. No, I'm not her teacher. And he like takes her and runs away. I was like, I love this. And Holden gets like so annoyed for no reason. Just like great. I love him and Xaden's interactions. And I like that Violet even points out like this must have been how he was feeling like when I was having my issues with the cat last year. Like very, very intuitive, Violet. Very smart. Thank you for understanding that. And then from Takaris's mansion, they then go over to Deverelli. And in Deverelli, you have that whole scene on the beach where Xaden is like out looking at the waves and everyone else is like just hanging out, whatever, and like Violet's watching him and he's just giving like yoga instructor to me. Like I can just picture him like with his little like linen tunic on, and he's just like peaceful from like no magic, and he doesn't have to worry about like the draw, but he's got like his little linen tunic on, long, with like linen pants, and he's got like no shoes, he's got his toes in the sand, you know, maybe like a little like big long beaded necklace hanging, like wooden beads, and maybe like smells like a little bit like patchouli, you know, but I was like expecting him to like turn to Violet and just be like, let the waves and the sand just wash away your troubles, you know, like just like very like zened out. And then part of me was like, let's leave Xaden here. If we're not going to use the Rybestad box, leave Xaden here. I don't understand like why that's like never a conversation that they have. Like it's a very like valid decision. Like Violet's the reason that, and even later on, Violet's in danger, so he draws from like the little oh my gosh, alloy coin that Violet has. It's never like a conversation. Like, clearly Violet's the reason that drives him towards wanting to draw that power, because he wants to protect her. If you remove Violet from the equation and leave Xaden in these areas where there's no magic, he can't draw and he can't further becoming a Venin. So I don't know why it's never like a conversation of like separating the two of them and like leaving Xaden in one of the aisles, and or putting him in the box, you know, like, and kind of taking away his ability to further becoming a Venin. I would like want to like shake their shoulders and be like, what are you doing? Like, just use your brain. Even though I say that, I do feel like Violet's intelligence really shined a lot in this book. She's really just like so smart, and I'm 100% here for it. I love like a good, smart, cunning character, and I just think it's fun to kind of like see her like work her way out of these different situations. I really love every Dane and Xaden interaction. I think that Dane and Xaden's interactions, especially when they're in, I'm gonna forget the name, when they're in Deverelli, is really funny. Like when they're like riding the horses into town and everyone's kind of just like, I can't believe you two are getting along right now. This is weird. And Riddick's like, I'm so glad I came. Like, I'm so glad that I got to be here for this. This is so much fun. I like seeing them interact in a way that's not like hostile. Because at the end of the day, they both just care about Violet, and they care about her in their own different, unique ways. But at the end of the day, like, all they really want is for Violet to be safe. And I feel like they should be able to bond over that, and they should be able to be civil with each other. Speaking of Dane, and this leg of the trip, I have a confession to make about Dane. I think that Dane and Riddick would actually make a really excellent couple. And I know that that might be like wild to say, but I just feel like, especially when they're in Corden, and you have that like small little interaction between the two of them, where I forget like exactly what happens, but like somebody says something, like Holden and Xaden are talking, and like Riddick laughs and Dane smacks him, and I was like, what are you two doing over there? Like, the more like I thought about it, I was just like, they would kind of be good together. Like, they would really balance each other out. Like, you have like Dane, who's very like straight-laced and follows the rules and like lives and dies by the codex, and then you have Riddick, who's like a little more free-spirited, and he kind of can let loose a little bit. And I feel like they would like balance each other out, like that whole like opposites attract thing. I just think that they could easily bring out a different side in each other, and I feel like it could be good for both of them to kind of rein each other in a little bit. So that's my secret Dane thoughts, my secret Dane and Riddick thoughts. Honestly, like, tell me why I was so surprised about the grandma when they mentioned her, when like Violet's like, you went and saw grandma? Like, I was like, what? They have a grandma? Like, obviously they have a grandma, but like, I don't know, I guess I just like didn't think she was alive because we never hear about her. So I was like super excited about the grandma. And I'm curious to see what is going to come from that, especially now that we know that Papa Sorrengail has a name, Asher Sorrengail. I have kind of like a theory about that, and I'll actually talk about it now because I feel like it fits in. So we have, in the like beginning chapters, we get some stuff from Asher Sorrengail, and we get some stuff from Asher Daxon. And I think that it was Asher Daxon first, and it was always Lilith Sorrengail. And then when they got married, Asher took Lilith's last name. And that's why Lilith says that in book 1 that there won't be a Sorrengail who's not a writer, because Asher would be a Daxon, not a Sorrengail. So it kind of works out that way. And I think that it has something to do with what happens when they get to the next island. So then when we get to the next island, and I'm forgetting what the name of the island is, Umbriel? Does that sound right? Umbriel? We get there, and Violet kind of sees all these different people that have silver hair like hers, and it's not gray, it's specifically silver. And it becomes so obvious to us that either Asher or Lilith or both have dedicated Violet to Dune in order to, for some reason. But Violet's like, no, there's no way my parents would do that. Like, zero shot. And I just wanted to be like, girl, obviously that they did this. Mira kind of like, as well, you could see she's kind of like questioning it a little bit too. Speaking of Mira, if Mira and Drake do not kiss at some point during the next 2 books, it will be a crime against humanity. Those two have such good tension. I love their arguments. I love their conversations. I think them two need to get together. I think it would be chef's kiss. Beautiful. Then we get to the next island. That is where we finally get to meet Xaden's mom. So to me, it kind of always seemed like she left willingly. Just the way that like Xaden talked about it, right? But when Xaden's mom, whose name we know is Talia or however it's pronounced, when she's talking to Violet, she kind of makes it seem like she was forced to leave. And it wasn't so much that she wanted to leave Xaden. And she kind of has like a nostalgia for Cheerendor. It seemed like she was kind of like forced out. So I'm curious to know if we'll ever find out more about that. I would like to learn more about it because I feel like it's very interesting differentiation in the way that she remembers it and the way that Xaden remembers it. So curious about that. And then you have the cake scene. And I loved Dane during the whole cake scene. No questions asked. He just kind of like goes off and does whatever Violet tells him to do. She's like, oh, I need this for my room. And he goes and he gets it. And she's like, oh, I need this from the kitchen. And he steps up onto the table and walks across and then jumps down because that's the most direct route to the kitchen. And I just feel like he really became my favorite character. Like, probably equal with Riddick. I'm going to say Dane and Riddick probably tied for my favorite. But I just feel like he has changed so much from the first book and a half to the last half of the second book in this one, where he really listens to Violet and he understands like, hey, like what I did was wrong and I need to correct that. And he is showing such great character growth and growth as a person that I'm like, this boy, I love him. I really am a big Dane fan. I know like I had my issues with him during the first book, but he has fully redeemed himself in my eyes. Speaking of the cake scene with Dane, I feel like in the scene after the poisoning where Xaden's kind of like freaking out and Violet gets like in between him and whoever the guy is, I don't remember his name right now. She gets like in between them and I think something clicks for Dane there, that something is going on with Xaden, because he kind of has like, Violet says he kind of has like this look on his face where he's like, like something there clicked for him, that something was wrong with Xaden, even though I don't think he knows exactly what it is. And we're continuing on this Xaden and Dane train. So then when they get to the next island and they have to do the trial, like the Zanal luck trial, I just know that Xaden was kicking his feet, so excited when Dane gets slapped in the face. He was probably so excited. Like I was like, okay, I see you. And I mean that whole scene where Violet has to kind of like bow and say thank you for them killing oh gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. This is why we take notes. When she has to thank them for, I have too many pages of notes. Traeger. Just like that scene I felt like was very powerful, and you can really see Violet's ability to be a leader in that moment. Very good scene. I liked it, even though it was sad. Like I feel horrible for Kat. Trust me, I feel horrible for Kat. But I did think the scene was really well done itself. And that brings us to the scene where they have to stop off at that little island and they're like, you know what, let's like swing around the island and see if we can find the Erids. And you get to, and everyone splits off into their groups, and you have Violet and you have Riddick, and you get to see kind of like a little bit of like Riddick and Atrum's relationship there. And honestly, like it was so good. Like I love their relationship. I think it's great that he was able to find a dragon that like matches his personality a little bit, which I know like is the whole point. I feel like majority of the dragons that we see, they're all like super serious, so it was fun to kind of see a dragon with like a little bit more of like a playful side, you know. And that I love that they're in like a prank wars. It gave me like Spencer in iCarly when he's like doing like the whole pranking like thing. I don't know, it made me laugh. While everyone else is out looking for the Erids happen to just show up to Violet and Riddick. But they are such bullies. They're so mean. I mean, like, how are you gonna be that way to Andarna after you left her there? Like, you knew that this could be something that could happen, and you're gonna turn around and then shun her for it when you were the ones who left her there. Like, she can't be faulted for the fact that you guys left her behind as, like, a test, and then she turned out to be what you guys didn't want. Like, she's still one of you guys, and you were the ones who forced her into being that way. Like, I don't know. I got really mad. Like, I literally was furious. Like, very upset about it. I really liked that Brennan kind of got, like, pulled into the whole, like, task force of people that were helping Xaden and Violet try to figure out, like, a cure for the whole venom thing. I will say that right before he kind of like mentioned it, I was like, oh, what if they like put the magic back in the ground? And then Brennan's like, oh, we tried putting the magic back in the ground and that didn't work, and we're like kind of running out of ideas. I was like, dang it, like there goes my whole theory. Although I do feel like they could use Sloane's signet, and maybe like that would be a way to get it to work. Like she can kind of like take the power from Xaden and then put it back in the ground, similar to how she imbued the Wardstone. Kind of like imbue the ground back again, maybe? I don't know. I don't know if that would work. And we finally have a second signet. Throughout the book, kind of like had a feeling that it definitely was something to do with her dreams. I thought it was gonna maybe be something like she can like see the memories of people, like maybe she was seeing like Xaden's memory, or seeing like Theophany's memories at some point. I didn't expect it to be like she can enter people's dreams, so it's like active dreaming that she's sharing with people, you know, and I feel like that's interesting. And like we kind of get to see her almost like alter the dreams a little bit, like her being aware and cognizant of the fact that she's in the dream can kind of like change the effect that it has on it. I think that's interesting. I feel like that's definitely going to come into play in the next book. I think that it's going to be fun. Like when she like learns to control this, it's going to be really fun. I cried like a little baby when Andarna broke her bond with Violet. I cried even harder then when Mira went to like comfort Violet, kind of like just like held her and coaxed her out of bed and tried to just like get her moving again. I don't know, the sibling stuff like gets me every time. Like I have 2 siblings, and just like anytime there's like a sweet sibling moment in a book, it gets me and I get emotional, and I love it. I was very appreciative of Mira, and I loved like the tag team of like Mira, Brennan, and Xaden all like trying to work together to kind of like help Violet out of her funk. It was a good healing moment after the wreckage that was Andarna leaving with the Irids. I understand why she did it, but I was still really sad about it. And then in true Rebecca Yarros fashion, the last 50 pages had my anxiety sky high, through the roof. I think I screamed like every 5 pages between everything that was going on. So you have Mira almost dying, you have Dane, Sloane, and Brennan saving her, you have Rhiannon and Imogen's point of view. There was just like so many things going on, and it was just like way too much to handle. My head was spinning. I think that was like the most that I had to really like process when it came to like being prepared to record a video discussing the book, was those like last 50 pages from like when they go to meet up to get Mira back on. I'm a little iffy on like the Dane Sloane thing. I know they hinted at it a little bit earlier in the book. Violet kind of notices Sloane like watching Dane, and a lot of people have been saying they feel like they're going to be the balance for Xaden and Violet. I don't necessarily love that. I don't know. Like, I just feel like, while I understand that we are forgiving Dane for what happened, I feel like I would so much rather a Sloane that was still angry. While I feel Dane should be forgiven for what he did, at the end of the day, what he did still resulted in her brother dying. So I just feel like I'm very conflicted about it. I know Sloane is conflicted about it. You can like tell in the way that she carries herself. So I'm just like, I don't know, very iffy about it. I don't know how I feel about it. I think also part of it is like, I really think Sloane would be good with Eric, and I would love to see that. So I think like that's also part of it too, because I feel like them two would be good together. In that scene though, you do have a moment where Violet mentions a gray handprint on Dane's arm. Pause, hold the phone, because I don't remember that happening at any point. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, like let me know where that happened down below in the comments, because I was so confused about this. I feel like we know that because of what happened in the infirmary in the beginning of the book, like if somebody gets drained by somebody, they kind of have like a gray patch on them, like a handprint or whatever it is that they're gonna have. I do not remember any scenes where Dane is near anybody that would have drained him, so I was very confused about this. I don't know, like I just was like, I feel like I missed something. I don't understand when this happened. I don't understand why it happened. I don't know. I have many questions. I will say again, Garrick really like stepped up in this book. Like I didn't expect him to be the character that would like really like come to the foreground of the story, but he really did. I feel like she really focused a lot on the side characters in this book, like between Garrick, between Bodhi, between Riddick, Dane, like all these side characters that like are there are now like getting like their time in the spotlight, and I really enjoyed it. Like that whole scene where like Garrick goes after Imogen and Imogen is with Quinn, and Quinn just died, and Imogen's like, I'm not leaving her, and Garrick's like, I'm not leaving you. I was like, oh, Garrick! Oh, and then he picks them both up and he carries them out. I was like, oh my god, I love him. Love him. So many good side characters. Like, I feel like that's the mark of, like, a good story is, like, your side characters are lovable and your side characters, like, kind of stand out individually. I just really liked Garrick a lot in this book. I feel like he was really great. Speaking of side characters that stand out to me, Eric will always stand out to me. Lynx, I feel like, is the most irrelevant person out of the group, out of the fourth wing, second squad, flame section group. I was so furious at the fact that he wound up having the shadow powers. I was like, wait, as soon as she said it, I was like, this should have been like Eric. It should have been like somebody that was like more important. Even if it was like Violet. Like, I feel like Violet had shadow powers, like, as her second signet. That would have been crazy. Like, I feel like Lynx was just like so irrelevant that I was like, why are we even like talking about this character right now? I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, like, if you're a Lynx fan, but like, come on. I was very pleasantly surprised by Eric's signet. I did have like an inkling of a feeling at like the midpoint of the book, I guess, whenever like Lynx and Eric are like walking down the hallway and like Eric grabs Lynx and pulls him back before whoever comes like slamming out of the door. I feel like at that moment I was like, okay, he like knows something. He has like some sort of like foresight. And I thought it was gonna be like Violet's like dream connection was gonna be like the balance to Melgren's ability to like see the future, but it turns out Eric is the balance for Melgren, which makes me think, I have to backtrack and explain. I feel like Melgren might be a Venin, and I don't know why. I feel like the fact that Eric has similar powers to Melgren, and we just went through that whole thing with like the balance of like Xaden and Lynx, it made me think like, okay, Melgren or Eric, one of them has to be like a Venin or something like that, because they're like, we have like this whole balance thing going on with people with similar signets. I don't know why this just occurred to me right now while I'm talking about this. You have that whole thing where like in the first book, Liam tells Riddick to watch over her like you're me, right? And Riddick does. He really like steps up, especially in the third book. He's very determined to protect Violet. But what I just realized right now is that Riddick has ice powers and Liam's second signet was ice powers. So they have like a little connection there too. I never realized that before. I don't know why that just occurred to me right now. We love that for them. Yay. Back to Eric. So he kind of gives like these cryptic messages, and I was like, every time he gives a cryptic message, I'm like, he knows something. He's seeing something. He knows something. And then it's confirmed at the end that he has the ability of foresight. But he, you know what he didn't see coming? He did not see, as far as we know, did not see Xaden going full Venom coming, but I did. So in your face, Eric. I was so, I hate to say excited when Xaden went full Venom, but I was excited because like I love like a good character arc where like you have this character that's so against becoming the thing that they are becoming. He's spent basically his entire existence fighting against these things, and now he is one. And he's like not just like a little part of one, he's a full Venom now. So I was very excited. I was like, this is going so good. It's going in the direction I wanted to go. I'm so excited. So that was very nice. A nice little surprise. And that brings us kind of like to my last note, because it brings us right up to the ending. And the ending I was very iffy about. First of all, can't believe we don't get to see a wedding. I'm sure eventually when we go back, like in the next book, because of Violet's whole like dream thing, I doubt Xaden's memory is wiped. But maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe we'll get like that whole like dream sharing thing. I also think that that's what's going to happen with Violet's memory being wiped, is that she's going to dream walk in order to try to piece together like what happened in those few hours that she lost. I don't know. I have like so many questions, like so many things, like it really just left it open-ended. And there's so many different ways and directions that this could go into. I'm excited to see where it actually does go. So that kind of brings us to the end of like my full review things I wanted to point out to you guys. And that kind of brings us into like our theories kind of section. And I have quite a few theories for this book. So we're gonna jump right into it. So that was kind of it, like I said, for the discussion-ish portion, and we're gonna go into theories now. First theory that I'm going to discuss is obviously going to be the new brother theory. I feel like it has to be either Bodhi or Garrick, and I have a reason for that. I know that they're the obvious choices. I think that it's pretty clear that like they're most likely going to be it, but here's the reason why I feel that way. So we have like a list of people that know, right? So the original group that knows is Violet, Imogen, Bodhi, and Garrick, and then the second group of people that finds out is Riddick, Rhiannon, and Sawyer, and then you have your final person, which is Brennan. So we know that the character is a man because he specifically says brother. He doesn't say sister or sibling to make it like obscure. He says brother. So that immediately takes out Violet, Imogen, and Rhiannon. The next thing is that he says that the person watched him struggle for months. So that makes me say it's not Brennan. And I'm gonna cancel out Riddick and Sawyer for that reason as well, because it says months. And that would leave just Bodhi and Garrick. And I honestly am unsure of which one it would be. I feel like they both have a pretty good reason to be that person. So you have Garrick, who's kind of like exhausted. He's been jumping and running and doing the walking thing like for hours now. And he just feels like he needs to do more. You can kind of tell in that scene with Imogen, he's like running on fumes at this point. So it's very possible that like in an effort to kind of like protect everybody, that he could have, you know, drawn excess power from the earth. The other person is Bodhi, and I'm really pushing for Bodhi more so than Garrick. I feel like Bodhi is the more logical choice. So it's mentioned, Imogen mentions it at the end of her chapter, seeing Bodhi on his hands and knees on the ground, and she says that he's throwing up. But I don't think he was throwing up. I think he probably was actually channeling, and there's a couple different reasons why I feel that way. So we kind of throughout the entire book get the idea that Bodhi doesn't really feel good enough. He feels like he's in Xaden's shadow, literally. He kind of just feels like the lesser cousin. He doesn't want to be the next in line for the throne, and he hates that Xaden tries to protect him and set him up to be the next in line for the throne. And he just feels like not powerful enough. I don't know if he lied to Violet about having a second signet. I'm hoping that he didn't. But it's very possible he did. I do feel like if he wasn't lying and he really doesn't have a second signet, that could be a really great kind of like reason for him to like push towards being a Venin to like gain some extra power. But yeah, I just feel like it could be Bodhi. I feel like he's like the most logical, and then it also plays into the whole wedding thing as well. So if it is Bodhi, then it would make sense why Violet and Xaden had to get married and why he left Tyrandor to Violet, because Bodhi would no longer be a viable choice for being the leader of Tyrandor. So I think it's Bodhi. I think Bodhi makes the most amount of sense. So I'm gonna say that I'm pretty confident that it's Bodhi. I did see some people saying that it could be Dane. I'm iffy on that one as well, just because I don't think Dane fully knew what was going on. But we do have that whole scene where Sloane kind of, when Sloane is drawing from him and channeling into Brennan, where she says, you have way more power than you should. And that kind of could be a tip off. And that's also part of the reason that I added him to my list of like the most powerful signet for 6th thing. And we can kind of see Xaden's powers, Violet's powers, they're all maturing as they get more comfortable using their powers. So it's very possible that Dane's ability to read memories and stuff like that has grown beyond what it originally was, and he might no longer need to like touch the person's face in order to gain the memories. He might be able to kind of just have like close proximity or touch them somewhere else on their body. So it's very possible that Dane could have pulled the memory of Xaden being a Venin. And since we don't really get Xaden's point of view until the end of the book, I'm gonna say it's possible that Dane could have confronted him about it, and maybe he did know for months. I don't really know. Even though I am like a little bit unsure now, like with that like thought of Dane and the thought of Garrick, I still think it's Bodhi. I just feel like he makes the most sense narratively for it to be him. So that's my theory on the new brother. And then we have my other theories. So the next one was, I kind of talked about it briefly already, and that was whether or not Sloane would have the ability to pull the power, the venonish power from Xaden and put it back into the ground, similar to how she did with Lilith and the Ward Stone, pulling her dragon magic out and putting it into the Ward Stone. I don't know if that would like work, but I feel like it could be a way to like solve the problem, like similar to the wavelength that Brendan was on, where it's like, okay, like what if I just like put the power back? Similar idea, but I wonder if it needs that conduit to go through Sloane to kind of direct the power to say, no, you're coming from here, you're going here now. I don't know. Speaking of the magic in the ground and the venom, so what if all the isles were originally like a part of the continent, or like kind of like a Pangea kind of thing, and because they were drained so much, they broke off and like separated and spread out, and now they're healing, and that's why they're all like muted in color. Like Violet makes a point on every island to kind of mention like, okay, like none of the colors here are as vivid as they are in Navarre. Like everything's very muted, dull coloring. So like what if it's because of the fact that this was ground that had been drained and that's why there's no magic and now it's healing? So I'm curious to see how that will play out. I don't know. The next theory that I have has to do with Asher, Sorrengail / Daxton, and I brought this one up a little bit earlier as well. So I'm convinced that they're the same person, which basically I feel like is confirmed. Asher, I think, took Lilith's last name after dedicating Violet. I think they probably didn't have the same last name. It doesn't seem like a necessity in this world that people take the last name. Or there's like a little bit of leeway with the last name thing, because we can see in that scene where Xaden is talking to his mom about like drafting up the marriage license with Violet, and he mentioned something about like taking her last name instead of his, and so we can kind of see like the last name adoption of the spouse is kind of like not as rigid. So I'm curious to know if like after dedicating Violet to Dune, or like some sort of disagreement with his family, that Asher kind of had to take Lilith's last name instead of keeping his last name, and that's like why they don't talk to the grandma, and like why Lilith said the whole like Sorrengail's a writers thing, because Asher is really like a Daxton. So I don't know. I have like some thoughts brewing on that one. Now that Xaden and Violet are separated, dreamwalking is going to be how they communicate. I think that it's going to expand her power, and she's going to be able to kind of like find him through that, because he doesn't always know she's there. So I feel like it could be a good way for her to like get some like sneaky information on what's going on with him. My other question, which is more of a question, not a theory, but Sgaeyl and Xaden and Tairn. So we know that Sgaeyl and Tairn can't be apart for too long because of the bond, of their mating bond. So how is it going to work with Xaden being like, don't come looking for me, if we know that Violet can't be too far from Tairn, otherwise it hurts them, and Xaden can't be too far from Sgaeyl because it hurts them, but Tairn and Sgaeyl can't be apart for more than a few days. Like, eventually they're gonna have to meet up because of their dragons. But what if Sgaeyl, similar to how Andarna did, broke her bond with Xaden so that Sgaeyl can stay behind with Tairn? And we know, because of Jack Barlow, that Venin can survive without their dragons, because Jack killed Bade and Jack is still alive. So what if Sgaeyl broke her bond with Xaden, and like now Xaden's just like freewheeling Venin all over the place? I don't know, interesting. I think it's an interesting thing to think about. So I'm curious to see. I'm sure that that's something that we'll kind of know right off the bat, basically, when the next book comes out. So I'm very curious about that. And my last theory, which is probably a little bit of like a crazy off the deep end theory, it actually popped up in the beginning of the book for me, but I wanted to wait and talk about it last because I'm curious to see how it's going to play out. Or if I'm just, you know, reading too far into things the way that I do. So, I like to call this lovingly my back theory. And this is the theory. So, we find out in this book that Venin need to feed in order to survive, right? So, if Jack doesn't feed, he will die. And they kind of go in and sustain him with like the little alloy chips and like give him that so that he'll continue living. So if Xaden is a Venin, then he has to be feeding from somewhere. There's got to be some place that he's feeding and getting the power from. We know from what Felix said to Violet in book 2 that her true signet is power. It just manifests as lightning because that's the most familiar version of power to her. I'm curious to know if, since her signet is pure power, is it able to be depleted? Or is it kind of just like this like endless supply? Like she's just like a battery of power and she can just like constantly be putting off power. We know she can burn out, which is different, but does she ever tire? Like, does her power ever like diminish to the point where she can't use it anymore? I don't think it does. I think that she just like constantly is like streaming power through her body. Something clicked into place for me in the beginning of the book. It's pretty frequent that Violet mentions the fact that Xaden is brushing his hand along the small of Violet's back. She mentions it a couple times within a few chapters, and then it kind of like peters out a little bit as you get further into the book. But she mentions it a few times at the beginning of the book. The other thing that we have is Violet pretty consistently complaining about back pain in the beginning of the book. She gets off of Terran, she complains her back hurts, she's sitting in class, she's shifting in order to like make her back more comfortable. So we have these two things that kind of brought up pretty consistently in the beginning of the book. And I mean, like from the past 2 books, we know that like Violet's joints are weak. We hear her complain about her knees a lot, her shoulders a lot. We never really hear her complain about her back before that I can remember. But it's brought up quite a bit in this book. So combining the fact that Xaden is a Venin, and we know that Venin need to feed or that they die, and Xaden keeps brushing his hand along the small of Violet's back, and Violet keeps complaining about back pain. I'm thinking these three things are connected. They have to be connected in some way. So what I'm thinking is the small of her back is kind of like the ideal place for Xaden to drain from if he needed to drain from something. And I don't know if he's doing it on purpose. I'm not going to say he's doing it on purpose. It could just be a totally like mindless thing that it just like is happening just from like his need to pull from the power. I just think like that's the ideal place. Like if he was going to pull from something and someone, Violet is the right person and the small of the back would be the right place. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1 is that well, there's 3 reasons for that, I guess. The first one is that we know that draining from a person leaves a physical mark on their body, the gray handprint on the arm of Dane, and the gray handprint on like the person from the infirmary. So we know that it leaves a mark on somebody. The small of Violet's back, 2 reasons that's a good spot. 1 is the only person that really sees it ever is Xaden. No one else really sees her without her vest on, and her vest would cover that. So those are the 2 reasons that the small of her back would be a good spot, because it's a weird spot that no one sees, and it's always covered by her dragon scale vest. So no one would like accidentally ever see it because it's always covered. She always has the vest on when she's in public.
And it's like a spot that like not even like Violet can see. Like it's like, I mean, you can see your own like small of your back. So like I think those 3 things combined, like the fact that it's a spot only Xaden can see, like Violet can't see it at all, like she won't notice, and that like the like armor she wears like would make sure that it was like always covered. I feel like those 3 things combined, like they make it like the perfect spot, you know?
I'm curious to know if he's been secretly training from her and what that would kind of mean for their relationship. So yeah, so that's all of my thoughts and my theories on everything that happened in Onyx Storm. We have no information about book 4 just yet. Rebecca Yarros in an interview had said that she didn't start writing it yet. She has a romance book that she's going to be writing next in between the 3rd book and the 4th book. And she probably won't be starting the 4th book even until the fall, like starting writing it. So I'm very curious to see how long it's going to be before we get the next book. And maybe my theories will change by then. Who knows? There's definitely an endless possibility of things that could happen with this story. So I'm curious to see where we're going to go from here. I'll see if anything changes for me as I think about it, similar to how things changed between my my video for Iron Flame and when this book came out. Let me know what you guys think, what theories you guys have down in the comments, because I love to read other people's theories and kind of see what people are thinking. So yeah, that's gonna be all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed Onyx Storm and kind of this very rambly, random, nonsensical stream of thoughts about the book. I am so excited for the next one. I'm hoping that we get it sooner rather than later, hopefully. So yeah, that's gonna be all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed and happy reading.